Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming to our second day of Billy Wilder, a tribute to Billy Wilder's comedies. You know, his filmography is too big for to do it in one shot, and we chose the comedies. And I'm thrilled because our guest today that will introduce the film, Foster Hirsch. When I called him and say Foster, he had been with us for Dial M for Murder. You know, he wrote a very big book called Hollywood and Movies in the 50s. And he's working on the 60s one. He also wrote two major books on noir. So Foster is a friend of the cinema, and I called him and said, would you come and introduce, Billy Wilder, and can you do Some Like It Hot? I thought it was, Friday Night, a popular movie. And he said, I will only do it if I can do another one. And then he'll explain why he wanted to do not just Some Like It Hot. So please let me welcome Foster Hirsch.
Thank you. How many were here last night for Some Like It Hot? Returnees. Okay. How many of you have seen Love in the Afternoon? God, no. And how many have not seen it, just to get the show of hands? Almost everyone. So you're giving us a chance. Okay. This film has a very interesting prehistory. So let me tell you a little bit about it. It was based on a French novel published in 1920. Called Ariane, a young Russian girl. There's not a trace of Russian in the film that you're about to see. And then it was turned into a film, a silent film, and then an early German sound film. And the co-writer of that film was Billy Wilder. When he went to America, he felt very much that if he was going to make it in Hollywood, he had to suppress his Viennese, European, continental background. He also felt he had to suppress being Jewish. So there were no Jewish subjects, no mention of the war, no mention of the Holocaust, and basically no mention of Europe. By the mid-50s, when he was very successful, he felt he wanted to show his European origins, and so he wanted to remake the film that he had co-written in Germany in the early 30s. And so this is his European celebration. It takes place in Paris. He wanted to film entirely in Paris. He loved Paris, though he said it was very distracting to shoot in Paris because you didn't want to work. You just wanted to go out and enjoy that beautiful city. So, but he did want to be true to the origins and the continental spirit of the story. The story, like all of Billy Wilder's comedies, has a touch of the naughty, the smirky, the unsavory. Is there something to offend somebody? You better believe it. He wouldn't have touched it if it didn't have something to offend you. He felt we Americans are terribly puritanical. And he felt Europeans were much more open and liberated and sensible on the subject of sex. And he wanted, well, I don't want to say stick it to us, but he wanted to disturb us. And he succeeded. So there always is something to be offended by in a Billy Wilder comedy. He wouldn't have it any other way. As a student of mine recently said, today, everybody is offended by everything. Keep that in mind. I think it's a sensible point. If you take it too seriously, you don't want to say anything about anything. And that isn't very good. But Billy Wilder was unafraid. But he also wanted to make a sweeter tempered film than most of his films, which are surly and dark and nasty and cynical, because those were aspects of his personality, along with the romanticism and the sentimentality. He was very much a creature of contradictions. So he wanted to make this romantic story about love in the afternoon. And isn't it wonderful that the weather's cooperating with us? Today it's a beautiful afternoon and perfect time to see a romantic film. However, the film disturbed people, and I have a personal anecdote. I had an aunt who loved movies and loved taking me to the movies. And when I asked to see Love in the Afternoon at the Paramount Hollywood in 1957, I'm old enough to have seen it when it first came out, the first week. She looked at me and she said, absolutely not. I will not take you to see a movie in which a young girl has a relationship with a man at least 2 or 3 times her age. And that problem of age between Gary Cooper and Audrey Hepburn was taken very seriously in America in 1957, and it killed the film. The film made no money in this country. It was released in Europe as Ariane, and how did it do in swinging Europe? Very well. Gary Cooper was 56 years old. Audrey Hepburn was 28, playing 18 or 19. Is that a shocking difference in ages for romantic partners, 56, 28? She played opposite an older man in Sabrina, Humphrey Bogart, who isn't very good in the film. Gary Cooper's much better in this film. Nobody said anything about that. She played opposite an older man, Fred Astaire, in Funny Face. Nobody said anything about that. Audrey Hepburn playing against Gary Cooper offended the Puritans of America in 1957. And that's why people haven't seen the film, because it has a low reputation ever since. So you're going to see this film, and it's very charming. Having said all that about Gary Cooper, he wasn't Billy Wilder's first choice. His first choice was always Cary Grant, and as always, Cary Grant turned him down. His second choice, listen to this, Yul Brynner. Interesting, right? Interesting, and closer in age, and there certainly would have been a sexual spark there. But he turned him down. Gary Cooper said yes. And Gary Cooper, what Billy Wilder said, not very tactfully, the minute I cast him in this part, he got old. Meaning, Gary Cooper is, to be honest, a mature-looking 56. He's not a young-looking 56. So Billy Wilder played some tricks, which I'm going to tell you about, and you're going to notice them. Notice how often Gary Cooper's face is in shadow. Notice the gauzy lighting, and notice how often the camera is placed behind Gary Cooper's back as he's talking to Audrey Hepburn. He is protecting the audience from the shock of an actor who may be a little too mature for the part. Nonetheless, I insist that Gary Cooper's right for the part, and as Billy Wilder said, Gary Cooper wasn't acting, he was playing himself. In the real world, he was very popular with women. And Billy Wilder said, I knew why. He listened to women. Gary Cooper didn't say much on screen or off. He listened to women, and that worked. Gary Cooper also played this part in Ernst Lubitsch's Bluebeard's Eighth Wife. Have you seen that one? It's a good one. It's a really good one. So he wasn't cast against type. And I can't stay up to the end, but I would ask you as a teacher, what is the most important shot in the film? There is one shot of Gary Cooper at the end of the film, and that's why Gary Cooper was cast in the role. It is a great shot, and the whole film turns on his reaction to a moment. Is that something to look forward to and pay attention to? I'm warning you. Gary Cooper is a I love Gary Cooper. He's a wonderful actor, and he must have been a wonderful father because I know his daughter, Maria Cooper. I'm doing a program with her in Southampton on May 2nd, and she is totally devoted to the legacy and memory of her father, who she said was a completely decent man. I believe her, and she's a wonderful daughter. So good news about Gary Cooper. Audrey Hepburn. Billy Wilder said he would not have made the film without Audrey Hepburn, and he signed her up a year before he was even ready to shoot. He said, there's no movie without her, and he's right. And then he had a comment about Audrey Hepburn I've never forgotten, and keep it in mind as you're watching the movie. He said, what Audrey Hepburn knows cannot be taught. Doesn't that make sense? That whatever you could, no acting teacher in the world could tell her anything because she knew it. It was instinctive and it was inborn. This is a long film. It's a film made in what is called the classical Hollywood style. So take a deep breath because you have to have patience for the pacing of the film. It is not paced like any film you're going to see first run right now. It's called the classical Hollywood style, long takes. The camera sits there and watches characters talking to each other. Can you believe it? Talking to each other. Minimal cutting, camera movement is elegant, but there's not a lot of it. The pacing is extremely leisurely. It's perfect for a beautiful afternoon like this. And Billy Wilder was wonderful at mise-en-scène. He's not often given credit as a visual director, but he was. If you come to see The Apartment, which I didn't mention yesterday, who's seen The Apartment and need to come to see it again? Scenes that are never talked about, but they show the touch of the director. In the office where there are thousands of workers, and you see the workers lined up in rows into the distance, that says so much about what the film's about. And then when you see action behind the glass office walls in the movie, and there's so much detail, that's all put there by the director. There's lots of detail in this film, including in the apartment that the Audrey Hepburn character shares with her father, played by Maurice Chevalier. They're supposed to be French. Audrey Hepburn does not strike me as French, but who cares? She's also not Russian as in the original. But that style that he has is augmented, the romantic style, by the great score of this film. When I was a kid, and I did, by the way, talk my aunt into taking me to see the film. I got to see it. She thought it wasn't appropriate, but I said it's a beautiful film. I loved it then, I love it now. I thought, remember the song Fascination, or do you know that song? You're all too young to know it. It became a big hit record with Jane Morgan, a name, does anybody remember that name? She just died at age 100. And she had a huge hit. I thought this Fascination song, which Audrey Hepburn hums throughout the film, was actually new to the film. No, it was an old German Viennese waltz, but it suits the romanticism of the film. The score is filled with romantic songs. I'm surprised nobody's ever turned this into a musical. It's ready to be a musical. There's a scene set in the Palais Garnier, the Paris Opera, if you've been to Paris, and it's a beautiful recreation. Most of this is on location, but the Palais Garnier would not allow Billy Wilder to shoot. He asked Alexandre Trauner, his master, a set designer, to recreate the Paris Opera, and it is a very good recreation. I was there not so long ago, and it really looks very much like it does in the film. So much to celebrate in this film. And my last teacherly question, there are 4 objects in the film because objects are important in Billy Wilder. Pay attention to the cello case, which is Ariane's protection. Pay attention to her anklet. Pay attention to her mink coat. And pay attention to the repeated use of the image of the Carnation. All of these will be on the test afterwards. But meanwhile, have a great time. It's a beautiful film. You'll love it.